This episode is brought to you by MPB. Get cash for the kit you're not using or trade it in for the gear you want at mpb.com. In this episode, it's all about a different kind of aerial photography. This is TWiP. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, I have Paul Seibert. He's going to be talking about aerial photography, but not in the way you might be thinking about it. You know, none of that newfangled drone stuff. Paul is old school. We're going to explain, and he's going to explain to us why he's chosen to put his butt in an aircraft and aim his camera out of the window versus sit safely on the ground with his thumbs on control levers flying around getting shots. Paul Seibert, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Frederick, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for again, right? So
again.
You know, so we were just talking about this before I press record. Every now and then with these podcasts, as you know, you're a podcaster, something just decides, I don't feel like working like I did yesterday. And we got that. Yep. So we recorded an entire version of this episode, yesterday? And
it was the best episode ever.
It was the best episode ever. This one will be better. But yeah, now we know all the secrets, so we can just lead to them. Right. Yeah, but it didn't come out right. So there was an audio issue. So here we are again, trying to get this pristine This Week in Photo quality audio for you.
Nice. Yeah, well, you know, like in 20 years when the technology comes around that we can recover it, it'll be like, you know, an archaeologist finds the hidden digital files and previously unreleased. Yeah, so.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm deleting. I cover my tracks, man. I don't know about you. I gotta delete. You know, history is owned by those who write it. So I'm deleting all of my mistakes.
Nice.
So let's dive in, man. So aerial photography. Well, before we dive into that, let's just hear a little bit about your background and what kind of led you in to this world of photography, and then, you know, the segue into the aerial stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I started getting into photography, I don't know, about 13, 14 years ago. Had a trip out to New Mexico with my wife for a friend's wedding, and I had a little Canon power shot with me, 8 megapixels, and I had a 3-inch LCD screen, so I was living large at the time. And I was really just kind of struck by the landscapes and how different it was being a East Coast boy 99.999% of my life up until recently. I had never seen landscapes like that before. And I had some experience with film photography back in high school, and it just didn't turn into anything then. I was into other pursuits. So I started taking pictures and remembered how much I loved it. And then after that trip, that little power shot came with me everywhere in my little belt holster. And I was out and about all the time with my camera until, the feedback on Facebook, because this was kind of before Instagram was going.
Yeah.
You start to get, oh, wow, you should really do this, or you should think about selling print. So I went and I got some advice from a friend of mine, person who's really the only photographer that I knew. She was giving me some pointers. You should do this, framing and depth of field and blah, 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 blah. And I kind of just reached into my bag and pulled out this little camera. And I said, well, this is what I'm working with. And she's like, oh, my gosh, well, then go out and, get yourself a DSLR. And so that's what I did, and I slowly but surely started to learn as much as I could, shoot as much as I could, and then as I'm a little bit older than the current generation using social media, so to meet up with people was something that was a little bit different and out of the ordinary. But it was taking that first leap was probably one of the largest learning curve flattener, seeing other people's perspectives, being around other people who are shooting and seeing things differently than myself. what proved to be invaluable. And so community has turned into such a large part of who I am as a creator. So yeah, I mean, that is, if we were in the Empire State Building, I may have held you up in the elevator pitch of telling my story a little bit.
Yeah, but that was good.
Worth it.
the doors are just now opening, so you're good.
Yes.
You're good.
Welcome to the 86th floor.
Yeah, look at that. So tell me about. I mean, I've got a ton of questions still that I'm going to re-ask you. But the path that you took of self-education or OJT versus a more traditional, butt in seats in a classroom with an instructor explaining f-stops and shutter speeds and all that stuff to you. Did you ever have the draw to like, you know what, I'm really not getting this inverse square law stuff. I need to go to a traditional school and sit down and get all that book learning in, or did you feel like you never needed that?
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, this was the most progressive way that I've ever learned anything. I come from a family of educators. My dad was a teacher for 45 plus years. My sister's a teacher. I offer workshops and other avenues. I was a musician, so I did private lessons as well. So teaching by the book was and is important. But yeah, I didn't do that. This was probably before YouTube became a place where you could learn everything as well. So my first steps into it were kind of refamiliarizing myself with what I learned in my film photography classes way back when. I had an understanding, but I read some books, and then once I kind of felt like I understood the concept, what I would do is I would go and say, okay, I'm going to take this chapter and I'm going to go out and try and shoot it, which is a way that I teach my workshops as well. We talk about the concepts, we talk about the principles involved in certain elements of photography, whether it's composition or it's just technique. And then we immediately follow it up with some practical application so that there's immediate kind of that, you need that muscle memory, I'm someone who needs that hands-on type of tactile learning. I feel like it's the quickest way for your brain to absorb what it is you're trying to understand. So yeah, that was really my way of learning. And then, like I just mentioned, being a part of a community where you have some folks that are out shooting what, you shoot kind of like what I do, and maybe we should link up sometime. And I'm a straight ahead shooter. I've always been like that kind of like you're on the nose, and sometimes to my detriment, I'm too much on the nose. So it was really great for me to see other people's perspectives. Like I would go home and I would feel like I got the shot, and I'd go through my pictures and I had 30 shots of the same frame. And then I would see my friends posting stuff up, and it would be completely different angles and perspectives. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I can't believe that was there. And I was just, my feet were firmly planted to wherever I was without any thought of anything other than that straight on shot. And so that helped me to expand my perspective and vision of the world in regards to photography, just because I would still go and get my one shot, but once I got the shot, I would leave my camera and I would kind of walk down the line to see what's everybody doing, why is he down there, what's this providing, and so slowly but surely my own perspective started to expand.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
That's like that. It's like, I'm from an earlier generation than you, right? So back in when I was learning photography, there was no such thing as community, right? There was no such thing as, it was, you get the shot, and we're shooting film, right? So you get the shot, you process it, you toil over it in the dark room, and now you have your photo. and then maybe a couple of people will see it, right? Because there was no we have like a global community now, whether it's, you know, whatever social media flavor you want to ascribe to, but we have a global community of people that can look at your work. And I think the cool thing about that for new photographers or for people that are wanting to get better at their craft or even a different genre is you got a bunch of people that can give you feedback. It's like back then I didn't understand the importance of these boring camera clubs, right? Why would I go to a camera club and talk about stuff, you know? And now I understand. You go because you want feedback so that you can get better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so important. And I think that it's so interesting because we think that we know it all sometimes in the moment, and then you realize how little you really know. So there's a healthy touch of humility helps the learning process be much more about the discovery and the expansion of what you know, as opposed to criticism that isn't received as constructive or helpful. It's all in your, again, it's all about perspective. So if we're not ready and willing to see other perspectives and expand how we're seeing something, chances are there's not going to be a whole lot of growth.
Yeah, especially from non-photographers, I think, because, you know, you can show non-photographer a mediocre shot and they may not know what's good and bad, but they'll, you know, hey, it's in focus. I like the colors. That's a great shot. You're great. You should do this as for a living, Paul. Right?
Yep. Yeah.
Right. But if you show that same shot to a pro, they're like, "What were you thinking? You cut the feet off and this and that, you know what? Go back and try it again next time. No amputations and try to get your exposure right. Right. So
yeah, absolutely. It's funny the differences in what people see and how people see, and then there's, you know, those in between people that know enough to be dangerous, right? Right.
No, exactly. You know, before we dive into this aerial stuff, I want to just chat a little bit about the work that you're doing with MPB and Photoville. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So. This past summer, I received an email from MPB outlining that they are doing a project with Photoville, which, being from New York, is it's a big thing to be involved in any way, shape, or form in Photoville. And so when they approached me and asked me, would I be willing to submit some images for a banner that they have in an incredible placement in Brooklyn Bridge Park, right underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. And there were some stipulations. There were, because I'm an aerial photographer, they like the idea of things being from an elevated perspective. But given that MPB is about their interactions with people, they wanted to have some people and they wanted to have some nature. So it was this kind of really interesting concoction or just mixture of all these things that I had to think about. So, you know, first and foremost, I think one shot that always comes to mind is there's this elevated perch on the east side of Manhattan for when Manhattanhenge happens. So you get the natural world and this kind of celestial happening as it crosses 42nd Street and the avenues in the summertime. You get people, you know, walking down the cross streets or out in the street photographing it themselves. And then, you know, so there's that kind of element of nature, city, and a little bit of an elevated perspective. There are a couple other times where I use some examples. In New York, for instance, I was on an observation deck, and I was giving actually a workshop on just how to shoot sunrise. And on my drive in, I realized that, you know, oh gosh, we're not going to have any clouds and it's going to be a little bit kind of boring today. So like in my good morning everybody speech, I said to them, hey guys, let's really kind of, I know we don't have a lot of clouds out there, so what we're going to do is we're really going to take our time and try and kind of highlight the directional movement of the light this time of day and how it interacts with the buildings, and if there's any haze in the air, that can kind of show the movement from the source to where it falls off and how it kind of intermingles in the buildings. We walk outside and there's this incredible low fog event where this observation deck is above all of that. So we have buildings kind of poking out, and as the temperature started to change, it actually got thicker. So as the light increased, the difference in the thickness of the fog increased as well. So I have a shot where there's just one single guy on this observation deck, and it's completely surrounded by these clouds, and just off in the distance you see, One World Trade, Freedom Tower sticking out of the fog. It was really an incredible morning. A couple others that one that I took some artistic liberties with, being a recent transplant out here to Colorado. I came to learn that in Boulder, which is about 20-25 minutes from my house, there's this section of the Front Range of the Rockies called the Flatirons. And if you know anything about New York, you know that famous building in New York is that kind of triangle-shaped Flatiron building down 23rd Street. And so what I did was I waited for the right time of day to kind of get the light to hit the Flatirons the same way that it was hitting in an existing picture of the Flatiron building that I have. I blended the two. So if you're looking at the picture, from the left side of the frame comes the Flatiron Mountains, and then as they're kind of angled, well, I have to do it this way, I guess, maybe. As they're angled, the Flatiron building comes out from that angle, and it's blended together. And then the other kind of image of note was that, I think I'd been here only for a couple of weeks, and I have a friend out here who's a pilot, and he said he needed to get some hours on a certain aircraft. So he's like, hey, do you want to go for a flight? I was like, sure, yeah. He's like, we'll get some breakfast afterwards or whatever, and it sounds great. So we're flying, and we're a little bit east of the Front Range, and out here it's prairies and cornfield if you're not in the mountains. So kind of looking out the window, and all of a sudden I'm realizing that, like, why can I read this cornfield? And as we approach, I realize that it's a corn maze, and it is a corn maze, and it says, I'm reading it and it says, proud sponsor of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And here in New York, Tunnel to Towers Foundation, which actually helps people nationwide, it just happened to happen because of 9/11, and the firefighter was, I believe, in Brooklyn, and came through the Hugh Carey Tunnel, ran to get to Ground Zero to help his fellow firefighters. So yeah, here I was 2 weeks out of New York City, and seeing this complete connection back to my lifetime, hometown in the middle of a Colorado cornfield. It was
a literal sign. Yeah,
it was, and to only be able to see it from the air, and having no idea it was going to be there. Like, it's just it was your field of alignment. That was your field of dreams moment right there. It was. Yeah.
Literal field of dreams moment. Yeah. Man, that's awesome. Are you digging Colorado more than New York? That's quite a shift, right?
I don't know that I've been here long enough to say that I'm digging it more than New York. It's obviously 100% departure. The speed of life is much slower, which admittedly I'm going to have to get used to.
Molasses versus fire hose.
Yeah, like molasses in January is more like it. So yeah, there's everybody is really respectful of speed limits out here. which is amazing.
Hey, you haven't heard one person say, "I'm walking here, I'm walking here."
Yeah. Like, I think I've been here for 3 months. I think I've heard a horn being honked at somebody, maybe 10 times at that time. And, in New York, you can hear that. That's how we communicate.
Yeah, it's Morse code.
Horn honking.
It's Morse code. Yeah, in Colorado, it's probably like a polite little beep. You get off your phone and make your turn, right? And there it's like, get off your phone.
Yeah. The light was green and now it's turning yellow. Would you mind moving through the intersection? Thank you. I'm back there like, what's going on up there?
Yeah, you're right. You got to calibrate down, and you're like, who is that wild man?
Yeah, I think like the first 4 days I was in Colorado, I went to honk my horn, and the funniest moment was my wife was just like, my hand went up, and she's like, "Don't you dare!" I was like, "Oh God, okay." So yeah, it is most certainly beautiful. This has been a busy summer, I think, as most creatives can attest to. Mm-hmm. We're all sort of on this kind of making up for last year type of schedule. So as much as I've wanted to get out and explore and get my feet kind of dug in out here, business versus exploration. Business comes first in our line of work, especially because there comes a time of year where the business is a little bit more quiet during the winter time, right? So you have to kind of, as they say, make hay while the sun shines. So
that's right.
That's what I've been doing. The sight of the Front Range of the Rockies is never lost on me. Every single day, if I'm heading down to the gym or something like that, and I just am facing right towards it, I can't believe I live here. That sort of thing. So it's really, it's really special. It's beautiful, and I'm looking forward to learning about this landscape and where to be and when to be. That's great. Yeah, it's always exciting, new places, and just kind of figuring it all out. If it's a permanent relocation, just kind of figuring out, hey, just the normal human stuff. Where's a dry cleaner? Where's this and where's that, and where's the UPS store? All that. A barber shop. Where am I supposed to go?
Exactly. What's a good barbershop? Who should I avoid? All that.
Yeah.
Paul, let's switch gears into aerial. We've been sitting on the tarmac for a while. It's time to get in the air, right? So
absolutely.
So, and I teased at the beginning of this that you made the decision, or you're currently. I'll let you explain it, but from my perspective, you've been shooting traditional aerial photography the traditional way, i.e. the photographer in the plane, doors, or in the helicopter, doors open, and shooting out of it like it's been done forever until the advent of drones and the popularity of consumer accessible drones. But now we have that, but you're still doing it the traditional way. Tell me about that and why.
Yeah, sure. So I think first and foremost, there were two things, right? I own a small business. I'm the only guy, right? So if I go through dry periods, there's a certain amount of budget restrictions that you have to adhere to in order to make sure that roof is over your head and food is on your back. And for me, drone was a luxury. But also, with that being said,
you said roof is over your head and food is on your back. I think food's on your table, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know how you guys do it in Colorado. You are pretty close,
Yes. I mean, I just gave you way too much insight into my personal life. So,
what you do on your own time, Paul Seibert, is up to you.
This is a judgment-free podcast. So, anyway, totally. Yeah, so the chili dog eating contest off of my back canceled for 2021 due to an outrage from the public.
Here you go. Thank you.
Being in New York, there are a lot of flight restrictions, and I am someone who. Look, I like to follow the rules. I like to set a good example for other people. I have a somewhat of a large audience on social media, and if I'm collecting images irresponsibly or illegally, I'm endorsing that behavior to a certain degree, right? Not even to a certain degree. I am endorsing it because I'm doing it. I'm participating in it. So there are, literally millions of people walking the streets of New York, and we all have heard and have participated in some sort of drone catastrophe where the drone decides to no longer adhere to your direction or your will. And in New York, if it bangs into a building and then drops, it could hit somebody. And you're talking about 1,000, 1,500 feet. And,
it's a weapon. Yeah. At that point, it's a asteroid.
Right. It's a safety concern. And so, with that being said, those are the two main reasons why I haven't gotten into drone photography. Now, because of the relocation and that there's a lot more open space outside of obviously national parks that I can fly a drone, I'm definitely looking into that. However, the main reason why I'm shooting out of helicopters is because, 5 or 6 years ago, actually 6, we're coming on almost 7 years now, I had an opportunity to take a flight with a friend of mine who was a photographer, and he was doing an article for an aviation magazine, and we were going to do what's called an air-to-air shoot. So he was going to shoot our helicopter that was being, presented in front of the kind of iconic New York landmarks, and I'd be capturing him as kind of, for lack of a better word, like B-roll, of his helicopter.
Yep.
So, yeah, we had the shoot, and it was amazing. And as soon as I got down, I mean, like
You're hooked.
that was it. I was hooked. I was ready to go back up every day, for as long as I could.
See, that's where, so this, like doing aerial photography as a business versus, and then like I said yesterday, and when we recorded this, I'm a hobbyist. I have a couple of drones, an older Mavic and a Mavic Mini, and I enjoy them. I like taking them out. It always feels like science fiction when I'm up there flying and how stable they are, because those things are stable enough to do long exposures from the air, right?
Yeah.
And so it just feels really like going from film, to being able to do that is just, I feel like I'm living in the Matrix. But when I like speaking to you, I'm thinking, man. And I'll preface this with having done aerial photography in the military as a combat photojournalist. We used to, at Vandenberg Air Force Base, now Vandenberg Space Force Base.
Space Force.
Sorry, Vandyland people. But we used to hang out at UH-1Ns and take video and photos of rocket launches. Because Vandenberg is a rocket launch base where they do rocket tests and satellites, and SpaceX now does a lot of work from there. But I remember all the effort and planning that went in just to go up to, just for our hours. This is military where, different kinds of rules there, right? So,
right.
And I wasn't paying a dime for anything, obviously. I'm just, hey, where do I sit and when do we take off? That was that was it. Yeah, but you, fast forward to Paul Seibert, when you're doing a pro job, I'm assuming you got to worry, you got to do your photographer's ephemera stuff. You got to know where the sun and the moon and the clouds and the weather, and the pilot has to be there on time. Anybody else in the aircraft has to be there on time. Fuel costs, pilot fees, all that stuff to get the shot, versus with a drone, you could still do all that planning, but it's more serendipitous in between. You can just pull over and say, oh man, the fog is rolling in. I want to get that shot, and then launch and get the shot, get back in the car and go home. So reconcile that part of it, the cost expenditure for getting the shot versus, not to make it a versus a drone thing, but what are the costs associated with doing traditional aerial photography?
Yeah, I mean, sure. You're talking about, dependent upon your carrier and the type of aircraft they have, you're talking about, just an hour flight can range. You can have $1,000+ difference depending upon the carrier, and what type of services they offer, what they can do for you. So I would say that in New York, a flight could be anywhere between $800 and almost $2,000 an hour. And that's the difference in aircraft. That's the difference in insurance. That's the difference of, how much they're paying. Like you said, pilot fees, how much they're paying their pilot, how much they're paying for fuel. That part, the business side of it, is going to be, you're going to have to rectify that on your own. You know what I mean? And whether or not you could also pay, $150 and be in an aircraft with 4 other people, which I don't want that anymore. I spent some time working for one of these photo flight helicopter companies out of New Jersey, and I did have an opportunity to grow exponentially during that time, but it was always on someone else's dime, if that makes sense. So it was an extremely unique and incredibly valuable time for me to be able to learn and grow. And if I was a step ahead of anyone during that time, as far as my learning went and my shooting from the air, by the time I left that job, I wanted to be 10 steps ahead of everybody else. Because if I didn't utilize as much as I could that time to learn and to understand where I am and what the light is doing, because there were times when I would be up every day, so I would see it change. I would say, even we're coming into autumn, right? Fall foliage. So, I would say, another week and these leaves are going to be good. They're starting to pop around here. They're starting to pop around here. But so I was afforded the luxury that would take someone much more time if they were just doing it flight by flight, to understand where the light is, what's happening. And it allowed me, after I left and started to put together images for an upcoming book that's coming out in March, that allowed me to understand, on this day I need to be here. I want to reproduce this shot, or I know that around this time of year this is what happened here. Right. And it usually happens because if the sun is out and there's a little bit of humidity, then it provides this relief, and the sun goes behind the building and all you're seeing is light and then a silhouetted building. It's amazing. All these things that I learned through repetition, through that, I would say the luxury of repetition. It allowed me to grow and to understand where to be. And then,
and living there, right? I mean, just being a resident and just getting your coffee every day and seeing things and knowing that, hey, around this time of year in Central Park there'll be ice skating, and and the shadows look ridiculous at this time of day, during this time of year, and from the air they do this. So being able to understand that. And I was thinking, as you were talking about, the traditional aerials versus drone aerials, and specifically in New York City, the radio traffic in New York City has to be unprecedented, right? So for a drone to be able to navigate that and keep it secret, or keep its connection with its base station from, DJI stated, in the case of DJI, their range is like 5 miles for this little tiny Mavic. So I can't imagine flying something, that weighs less than this, even a mile over New York City, with all those cell phones, all that Wi-Fi, all that police radio traffic, all that stuff. It's got to navigate through that rat's nest. So I think in the end, doing it the way that you're doing it is why we see so few of those kinds of photographs, right? Those kinds of photographs over New York City, because it's expensive, it's hard to do, and not just any old, dude with a Mavic Mini can send it up, while he's having coffee at Starbucks in the corner and get the shot and then come land and go. It takes effort and planning. So I just want to put that out there, because that's, a lot of people say, well, I don't care about rules. I'm just going to fly my drone and get the shot. You could do that and potentially hurt somebody or get in trouble, But the correct way to do it is the way that you're describing it, for a town like New York. Now, in Colorado, you'll probably see a lot of drones out there, right? So
yeah. I mean, it's completely different. You're in a completely different environment. If your drone goes down in a field somewhere or on a mountain, it's not as directly detrimental to human life as it would be. I think obviously there are some environmental concerns that can lead to questioning whether or not it's safe. But you're talking about there's a lithium-ion battery that if it falls and crashes, it could leak and it could get into water sources for animals or whatever.
Or start a fire. All that.
We're dealing with environments that are wild and protected, and I think as creators, it's really important for us to try and do our best to leave it the way we found it,
or better.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's I feel like that's one of the curses of social media, as people are finding these places that used to be local favorites, these little holes in the wall and little nooks and little beautiful spots. And once a spot gets out, then the people flock to it, right? Yeah. And there's different levels of awareness and concern for the environment. Simple tasks such as staying on a trail. As you're in these kind of fragile, especially up here, you get to a certain height and you're walking in tundra, and you don't necessarily really want to be walking in tundra because it's delicate. So little things like that. There's the difference between, does it impact, do I see an immediate impact? No. Rather than like a drone falling and hitting somebody or crashing into a car or doing whatever. There's an immediate impact there. But if you see repeated behavior time after time after time in these protected places, you start to see to the detriment of what we're doing just to get a picture for some likes, for some exposure, or whatever it is. So yeah, there's a level of responsibility that I think we all need to be aware of, that we have that, especially when you have a larger audience, or any audience for that matter, because you could have 500 followers, and 50 of those people that follow you could want to go out and get that shot, and that's irresponsible people can change something forever.
They can destroy it. Like locusts. So it's like that's a hard one, right? You're like, okay, look at the secret spot. I've hiked for 3 miles. I found the secret opening, and the sun is right there. Look at the valley, and there's deer, and you take a picture and you post it. If you share the GPS information, then there's a chance that some people will see it and come there, and then next time you go, there'll be a crowd there, trying to get that shot. So do you share the shot? Do you share the shot stripped of its GPS information and not tell anybody where you took it, or do you only share the photo or enjoy it yourself? Right. So it's
right. Yeah, that's like a completely different thing, right? Because now you're talking about something that's cultural and psychological over just kind of back in the day, that's all you used to do, right?
That's what I used to do. Like, hey,
subjected to someone's slideshow. Check this out. You're like, oh, here we go. Like, you went on vacation to Sheboygan. Are you kidding me? And I have 100 slides I have to watch. But I mean, now you feel as though there is some level of necessity to share, to overshare. I think that's definitely a personal choice. I understand both sides of the coin. I feel like I'm someone who can see the benefit of sharing where I was, but also there's a part of me that's like, I don't know if all of you can handle the responsibility if I do share it, so I'm gonna, or do I just keep it for myself? And so it really, it's really an interesting conversation. That would be like a great round table conversation.
No, for sure. Yeah, what do you do? Yeah, maybe we'll make that a future TWiP roundtable conversation. You know, I wanna before we wrap this up, I want to get into gear a little bit, and I want to understand what your loadout looks like. You know, I know it may vary depending on what the client wants and the end result and all that, but generally speaking, when you're leaving the house and you know that you're heading to sit down on one of those aircraft and go get a shot, what's with you? What's in your bag and on your back?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a Canon shooter. And so one of my bodies is the Canon R5, and the other one is Canon 5D Mark IV. And normally for daytime flights, I would say, you know, unless something has happened to my lens, I'm 100% of the time shooting 16 to 35 and 70 to 200. 16 to 35 to get those kind of, you know, if you're looking out, you're seeing the, you know, the panorama, the vistas, and how so much humanity, especially in New York, is stuffed into this little neck of, you know, an island, and how it interacts with how it's constricted naturally, right? So that's always of interest to me. I love that kind of that combination of the natural world interacting with how man has kind of fit themselves into to make things work. And then the 70 to 200 obviously is for those detailed shots or those compression shots. One of the great things about flying above New York City is I get to see some of the architectural details through a 70 to 200 that hardly anybody else gets a chance to see. So sharing that is always exciting to me, because a lot of the crowns of these buildings are incredibly ornate, and so much thought and planning has gone into it. And we, you know, if you're just walking down the street and you look up and you're like, oh yeah, there's another thing with some glass on it, and it's kind of okay, I guess, and you keep it moving. But to see those kind of finishing touches, the turrets, the crowns, the little pergolas that are resting, or the clock towers that are on top of these older buildings, that's the fun part for me, is discovering something that I've never seen before. And then, you know, if it's an evening flight or something like that, I switch out to primes, because you know, you're in a moving aircraft. There's you know, I'm not shooting on a gimbal. There's no tripods. There's nothing like that. It's all handheld. Yeah. So you want to get as much speed as you can out of out of your equipment to keep the digital noise down. You know, obviously these last couple of years we've fallen into an area where we're starting to get these technological advances, that these tools that we have are now providing us with such incredible low light capabilities and dynamic range, that it's finally like when you see something and you can shoot it at night, handheld, and get the shot, and then still be able to recover things without there being an overwhelming amount of noise. It's like, you know, what a time it is to be alive.
It's,
you know?
crazy.
It's magic. It's really amazing.
It's a kind of magic. Right?
It is.
Yes. Yeah. So okay. So then the last step. So you got the shots. You're landed. You're back to your home office. What are you doing post-processing wise? Are you a Lightroom guy, Capture One guy, Photoshop, Camera Raw? What does it look like? Yeah.
I am definitely. I'm you know, a Lightroom Photoshop guy. Normally, what happens is I get home and I keep all my images on externals. So just for protection's sake and backup and all that kind of good stuff. That's important. I feel like at some point I'm going to have to go to a server-based thing, just because the size of the pile of hard drives that I have is offensive.
Don't get them wet at night, man. I'm telling you.
No, that's it. That's why I moved to Colorado. It's 300 days of rain and it's like a desert, so we're in good shape.
Good.
But yeah, I dump into externals and then I import to Lightroom, and what I do is I basically kind of do my histogram adjustments, get everything kind of evened out, recover some of the shadows that I need, and tone down some of the highlights depending upon what it is I'm shooting. Obviously, the more contrasting light situations like sunrise and sunset require a little bit more time, a little bit more extra care to kind of to recover some of, I shoot for highlights, right? So if there's any color or anywhere, I want the color in camera, and then I'll deal with what I have to deal with after the fact in my post processing. And then from Lightroom, once I've kind of gotten somewhat squared away on the direction that I'm seeing an image is moving in, I'll pop it over to Photoshop, and I'll do kind of more of the in-depth light shaping and color work. I try to do as much with the light to accentuate the color rather than do a lot of extra color work. I will definitely bring down some of the luminance, or I will add a touch if I feel like it's needed. But most of my color work really comes from adjusting the light in the image. So once that's all said and done, bounce it back to Lightroom for a few final touches, and then export it. And
it's gone. How do you get those images to the client? Are you doing this traditional Dropbox share, or do you use something more involved?
It's I would say probably 90% of the time it's a WeTransfer type of thing. To me, I really like that, just because of the fact that when you send it, you get a notification that it was successfully sent, and then when they download it, you get a notification that it's been downloaded. So I know within however long it takes them to get to that link that they have downloaded those images, and like my job is done.
It's good.
I will also I will say, like, for family and shoots and for weddings, which I know we touched on yesterday, but we didn't really touch on it, that as a freelancer, that's
you do all that,
a wide range of what I do. So what I will do there is I will set up a client gallery on my website where there are prints that can be purchased. Choose.
And you do it all locally. You're not using any software as a service like Pixieset or SmugMug or anything for that?
No. So my website is SmugMug. So,
Gotcha.
It provides me with that, which is really like as a I've had that since I started, and I've understood that is a valuable tool to be able to offer prints, and to be also able to offer a gallery, so that people can see and draw from, should they so choose. That's how the website is set up.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, we skipped over that whole part about, that you are a multidisciplined, and we even talked about content creation and how that was kind of a commoditized term these days, right?
Right.
The phrase content creation sounds like, you're on an assembly line, time to make the content, not an artist. Yeah.
You're pumping out boxed content. Which I feel like, I don't know, I've always been someone who's kind of bucked that kind of, look, let's talk about something very quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but let's just talk about
we have all the time that you have, so.
Nice, okay. I just wanted to, there's also this kind of, I feel like looking down on when people go to these classic spots, right? The postcard spots, and how after a certain point, people are like, I just don't go there because everybody goes there and blah, blah, blah. But, I also want people to understand that when you're starting out, like, it's okay to go to these places. We've all gone to these places, and we go to these places because of what they offer. It could be a great view. It could be a quiet location. It could be something that is inspiring to other people. But regardless of the why, these quote unquote classic places are classic for a reason. So to be able to go to these places and capture it, great, get the shot. But what I always try to encourage is, if you go and you get the shot, Okay, recognize when that part of the shoot is done, and then try and find something that makes what you're going to share your own. Find a different angle, figure out what time of day to go there. If you see a characteristic that is happening with the light and I just missed it, and you're close enough, go back the next day, or go back when the weather is similar conditions. But find a way to make those shots your own, as opposed to just being a facsimile of someone else's shot that's been shot over and over again for the last 20 years. And I think that's where that thought of content comes in, because I think we try and try and put a level of importance on something that we're doing by saying it's content rather than just an image. Because content is, it has this connotation that there's mass quantities of it and it's easy to do. I don't think that that's healthy. I don't think that saying, describing our artwork and our hard-fought images as content is kind of like saying I went out and I bought a box of Q-tips. Like, there's a lot in the box and they all look the same, right? Is that what you're saying about,
That's right.
Images? No, because every image that we share, whether you want to admit it or not, there's an emotional attachment to that image. It's an experience that you've had. So why are we decreasing the emotional quotient and not educating our viewers on what it takes to create these images, sometimes on a daily basis for their enjoyment and consumption? It's and when we get into that, we've all gotten into that rat race of, I haven't posted in 12 hours or 24 hours or 48 hours, and I don't know what's going to happen, and we're all concerned about how our content is going to be consumed and how it's going to be, how much exposure we're going to get because we're at the hands of an algorithm somewhere. Look, if you're just starting out, learn the craft,
right?
Learn the craft and have fun, and stop being concerned about numbers. Numbers come when either you're providing something of value to other people, or you just be a human being.
Right.
Just engage with people. If you have questions, send a DM. If you have, or comment. If I think we're so concerned with numbers, and how are people going to see me, that we're losing the real reason why we're going out and capturing these moments, because they inspire us personally. So why not share that level of joy and inspiration and awe in a way that makes people want to go out and do it for themselves, not for numbers, but for the joy of those moments that you take with you.
I love it. Yeah. And the truer words were never spoken, man. I mean, yeah, you hit on a lot of good points there. And one of them is, kind of akin to that there's nothing new under the sun, right? So, and it's true. There's really not a whole lot new under the sun, and many photographs that you admire, or a lot of photographs have already been taken, but not taken by you, right? So if you go to a spot, chances are, unless you are some robot, you're not going to be there at the same time, at the same height, at the same weather, at the same a bunch of variables as another person. And even if it's a similar shot, you will understand what it took to make that particular shot when you do it versus just looking at it. And then when you want to recreate it or go do something else, you carry that knowledge forward with you to do something else. So yeah, I'm glad you said that. I agree with that. And I get struck by that as well. I'm here in the Bay Area in the Northern California, and I'll go to Yosemite, I'll go to Napa, I'll go to, down San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge. And I look at these iconic places and I always think, man, these landscape photographers really have something special, because I come here and I look at these and I just see, I don't know what I can do. How do I add to the equation? Is my shot really necessary when it's been done to death? And like you're saying,
right.
It kind of is, because it's never been done by me, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Love it. Let's wrap up on this. So if folks want to hire you or follow you or check out some of the shots, we'll share some shots that we've been discussing in the blog post, the show notes for this episode. But where should people go? I mean, do all roads lead to your website? Do all roads lead to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter? Where would you like them to go?
Yeah, I would say probably the most up to date and place to see my work is going to be the Instagram. I'm trying to do a little bit more on Twitter, because it seems as though the community has slid over to Twitter over these last
from Instagram to
months.
Twitter. Oh.
Yeah. With the advent of, we're in this new digital blockchain, crypto, NFT world. The discovery of that entering into the mainstream in our creative communities first really kind of showed up in Twitter, Clubhouse, I don't know, 8-9 months ago, where it really started to pick up some steam. Now, obviously, it's been around for a while. It's just, I feel like, from my limited experience, that's when it really started to kind of pick up some steam, where creatives felt like this is a place where I can do well for myself. So Clubhouse, that chatting and talking, as well as Twitter, where there is a community of creatives that it makes it feel kind of like the old Instagram, where, before algorithms were in place, there's a level of support that I haven't felt, and excitement that I haven't felt in a while over on Twitter. Now, that being said, yes, my largest audience and most of my more up-to-date images are on Instagram. And then I think any type of contact that you need, contact points are there. My website is there. It's clickable to that. Email is always a great way to catch my attention. And I feel like I will take it more seriously than a DM that just starts out with hello and then nothing else. Because I can't, man. I can't. Let's get it moving here.
Those days are over.
I'm still from New York. You know what I mean? So I'm like, let me know what you're talking about, and let's
don't waste my time.
Yeah. Spit it out. So yeah, emails are always probably the strongest way for me to, when I get an email to my business account, I'm like, everything stops, and I'm like, okay, what is this person saying? Still, I get some interesting emails, but regardless, it gives me a moment of pause and let me see what we're working with here. So yeah, I would say Instagram for the most up to date, and then email and website. There's a contact point on my website as well, which shows a little bit more than just my landscape, cityscape, aerial stuff. So you have an idea of other things that I do.
Love it. Congratulations on all the stuff you're doing. What's coming up for Paul Seibert in the future? What's the next thing that you're going to be working on?
I would say the two biggest things right now. I am finishing up what I hope to be the first season of writing, directing, and hosting a series for Canon on their YouTube page. First episode should be coming out sometime soon.
Nice.
So stay tuned. That was a big part of my summer work. And as I mentioned before, I have a book coming out in March, published by Rizzoli Books. It's called New York from the Air. And It is my aerial and elevated perspectives of New York City. And so coming to a bookstore near you in, end of the first quarter, something like that, I think.
That's so cool, man. You got a lot going on. Congratulations. And
Thanks.
And two things. One, it was a pleasure meeting you and chatting with you. I had a chance to do it twice. And two, sorry for having to do this twice.
Look, if it doesn't work this time,
we're out.
Get a string and a solo cup, and I'll just have somebody drive it out to California, and we'll do it that way.
I know. If this audio is low, prepare for a text-only episode of This Week in Photo, where it's just paragraphs of discussion back and forth.
Right.
Well, cool, man.
Review the transcripts of this podcast, please.
I know. Oh, God. Yeah, the life of a podcaster.
Great. I had a great time both times, and I liked the varying conversations. So it's always fun. And if you want, I can't do it tomorrow because it's my anniversary. But Saturday, if you want to do another one, let's.
Actually, we have to do it on your anniversary, man. Come on, live a little. Just bring an iPad to dinner with you and just set it up, and we'll, I'll be at the table with you guys while you have dinner. So come on.
That might be the most controversial episode you've ever had.
Totally. The intrusion of Frederick Van Johnson.
That's it.
Cool, man. All right. We will leave it right there. Paul Seibert, thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate you. This is TWiP. This episode was sponsored by MPB, the world's largest online platform for used photo and video kit. Visit mpb.com.